Madam Speaker, Canadians of Chinese descent are great contributors to Canada and are part of an ancient heritage and civilization that has contributed much to humanity. I have a thriving Chinese-Canadian community at home, and they've been very kind to me over the years. As the Shadow Defence Minister, it is my job to critique the government's defence policy and posture with the goal of making national security more sound and stronger. This is very close to my heart as a former Associate Minister of National Defence. When I look at China as a strategic player on the global stage, I can visualize its progress over time, from what Westerners considered a backward developing state to a now great power, a superpower on the rise. It is a non-status quo power in that it has an interest in carving out a sphere of influence for itself, not just in Indo-Pacific, but also around the globe. In so doing, it brings itself into conflict with other great powers like the United States. And it's time for this Canadian government to take seriously the threats that the Beijing communist leadership poses to Canada's national interest and security, as well as our values. On 24th of July 2019, China published its first defense white paper in 4 years, National Defense in the New Era. The document outlines the strategic guidance for the People's Liberation Army. The white paper commences with a review of how China sees the global security environment. In China's view, there has been a redistribution of power in the international system, in that there is no one superpower anymore, and this has led to a multipolar system. This trend toward multipolarity and the decline of the world's only superpower, the United States, has led to greater instability and strategic competition, and the world is no longer a tranquil place. Beijing views the United States as the biggest threat to international stability and security, and the white paper warns about American, quote, growing hegemonism, power politics, unilateralism. But the document does not stop at examining the U.S. It also looks at U.S. allies and other significant states in the world. It notes that NATO has continued its enlargement, stepped up military deployment in Central and Eastern Europe, and conducted frequent military exercises. As well, it notes that Russia is strengthening its nuclear and non-nuclear capabilities for strategic containment and striving to safeguard its strategic security space and interests. Furthermore, it points out that the European Union is accelerating its security and defense integration to be more independent in its own security. The document is transparent in its statement that the goal of Chinese defense policy is countering the U.S. and replacing it as the world's superpower. China singles out those states that it sees as U.S. allies and partners in disrupting the region, particularly South Korea, Japan, and Australia. The document also singles out Australia for its military alliance with the U.S. and its military engagement in the Asia-Pacific region as seeking a bigger role in security affairs. Not surprisingly, the document claims that China policy in the Asia-Pacific region has been a resounding success and suggests a China-led security architecture for the future. It seems that Beijing views the Asia-Pacific region in almost the same manner as Imperial Japan did immediately before and during World War II. The white paper asserts that the fundamental goal of national defense in this new era is to deter and resist aggression, safeguard national political security, the people's security and social stability, oppose and contain Taiwan independence, crack down on proponents of separatist movements such as Tibet independence and the creation of East Turkestan, and safeguard national sovereignty, unity, territorial integrity, and security. Other strategic national security objectives include safeguarding China's maritime rights and interests, security interests in outer space, electromagnetic space, and cyberspace, as well as safeguarding China's overseas interests and supporting the sustainable development of the country. The white paper notes that the Japanese administer Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea, which are also claimed by China, are inalienable parts of the Chinese territory. It vows that Beijing will defend its national sovereignty and territorial integrity via patrols in the waters near the disputed islands. Other states that claim parts of the South China Sea are told that the sea is also an inalienable part of China. The white paper says China exercises its national sovereignty to build infrastructure, deploy necessary defensive capabilities on the islands and reefs in the South China Sea. With regard to Taiwan, the document uses plain language not seen in previous defense white papers. It states that to solve the Taiwan question and achieve complete reunification of the country is in the fundamental interests of the nation of China and essential to realizing national rejuvenation. China adheres to the principles of peaceful reunification and one country, two systems, promotes peaceful development of cross-strait relations, and advances peaceful reunification. So it says. La clé des objectifs politiques de Pékin est l'armée populaire de libération. La Chine dispose de la...
China has a huge military machine with over 2 million soldiers who could turn against an adversary like Taiwan at any time without warning. China still suffers from organizational difficulties that undermine its effectiveness.
Since its border war with Vietnam in 1979 and skirmishes with India in the Himalayas, the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, has an increasingly modern military featuring strategic nuclear and conventional rockets and ground, sea, and air forces. In terms of the strategic nuclear deterrent, China has 100 rail-based ICBMs that may be targeted on the U.S. right now and has developed 2 new fields of some 250 silos for its reportedly growing nuclear arsenal. Important to note, the increase in the Chinese nuclear strategic deterrent tends to move away from its past minimalist approach to nuclear counterstrike, which it has reportedly had for decades. It suggests that Beijing is about to drop all pretenses of a no first use policy. In August 2021, China reportedly tested at least one nuclear-capable HGV that was launched from a Long March 2C rocket and orbited the Earth before it attacked its intended target. The HGV travels at an extremely high speed, above Mach 5, to its target, is maneuverable, unlike a ballistic warhead on a parabolic path, and may strike its target with little or no warning almost anywhere on the globe. FOBS is designed to place nuclear warheads into a fractional orbit from the southern hemisphere, where they would likely go undetected instead of launching them by a ballistic missile over the North Pole. The advantage of the FOBS is avoiding the North American Aerospace Defense Command. NORAD's constellation of radar stations look out into the Arctic space, and satellites are positioned to look at the northern hemisphere rather than south. As well, FOBS has no range limit, is incredibly fast, and has no predictable path to give away its target. The Communist Party of China has at its disposal an army of about 975,000 soldiers to defend Chinese interests, with enormous reserves potential and important paramilitary forces of around 660,000 soldiers. Beijing now has the world's largest navy, 250,000 sailors, 355 warships that it can focus on the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The PLA Navy has 4 modern amphibious dock vessels and 2 amphibious helicopter assault ships. The Navy has 2 aircraft carriers, 1 cruiser, 32 destroyers, 49 frigates, and about 125 smaller corvettes and missile craft of various capabilities. It has a submarine force of nuclear-powered ballistic missile and hunter killer boats, along with many conventionally powered subs. The 2 operational aircraft carriers are of modest capability, with a larger third under construction, but the surface combatants are peer or near peers to their Western counterparts. For Canada, it's important to remember that China is interested in our Arctic region and the riches there, as well as the prospect of a sheltered area where its nuclear-powered ballistic missile subs might hide in the Arctic during possible tensions with either the U.S. or Russia. Chinese state media have reportedly called the Northwest Passage a golden waterway for future trade. To Denmark's concern, Beijing has expressed an interest in Greenland. So in conclusion, Canada ignores China's growing global interest in its military might at our peril. We have to step up, join our allies in Quad and AUKUS, and vote for this committee to reconvene and do some very good work.
Well
Thank
said.
you.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I appreciated my colleague's speech, and I'll play nice because the Conservatives gave us a rough ride the other day on the prayer. They said we should be talking about inflation instead. Unfortunately, that's not the issue today, perhaps because Jean Charest is in the race. That's distracted them. But I have a simple question for my colleague, and that is, it's relevant to have a committee on Canada and China, but should there be an end date for this committee's work? Thank you.
Rock.
Well, Madam Speaker, I would suggest the terms of the committee's mandate can be worked out among the parties, but the crucial thing is that it be reconvened, and we understand that the work is very crucial to our sovereignty as a nation as a whole, to our allies, and in our Arctic, which is very vulnerable. We need NORAD modernization. It hasn't happened yet. We're under in our numbers of personnel in our armed forces. We are under-equipped. We need to be more vigilant.
Comments? Your Honour, Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I listened to the member's intervention and the member from Wellington Halton Hills, and excuse me, I don't disagree with a lot of the concerns that they raised, but you know, specifically I heard about national security, foreign affairs, economic relations and supply chain issues, but we have committees that deal with all of these things. I'm just curious why the opposition feels as though we need a special committee, and is she not afraid that that might actually take away from the work from these other committees when you're basically saying don't deal with this issue because we have a different committee for it?
For South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the question. I think it's a good question, an important one in this discussion, because yes, we do have committees that touch on this. I'm on the National Defense Committee. I know the Global Affairs Committee deals with some of these issues, but as my friend has pointed out, my colleague, they are very, very taxed in terms of the amount of work they have to do. In the National Defense Committee, we've already looked at national security threats, recruitment and retention. We're looking at aid to civil authorities. We're trying desperately to get out a couple of reports. So we need a special committee focused on this issue.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And comments, the Honourable Member for Hamilton Centre.
Speaker, we've heard this party time and time again cite that the targeting of an individual nation such as Israel was cause for anti-Semitism, and yet it seems that this party has a fixation on China. In fact, yesterday, it was a Conservative MP who blocked a very basic motion to condemn the murder of a journalist in the occupied Palestinian territories. So through you, Madam Speaker, to the member opposite, why does this party seem to have a double standard when it comes to upholding international law and basic human rights?
For South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And literally, how dare the member from Hamilton Centre make a veiled accusation on this? This is a very important issue. It's about our national security, and it has nothing to do with the people who make up a very proud nation. It has to do with the communist leadership and what it is doing, in fact, even to Chinese Canadians, scaring them to death here in our own country, as they have recently in the last election.
Absolutely.
Before I go to a brief question, I do want to remind the member from Hamilton Centre that he had an opportunity to ask a question. If he has other questions, he should wait, as opposed to yelling out other questions or comments. Questions et commentaires. A brief question, the Honourable for Renfrew-Nipissing, Pembroke.
Thank you, Madam. My colleague knows that our NATO allies have reevaluated their positions on how they deal with China. How will this committee assist Canada in dealing as a whole-of-government approach against the Chinese communists with respect to their asymmetric belligerence towards our country?
Honourable Member for South Surrey White Rock. A brief answer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It really comes down to focus, I would suggest, to this House, that it is a big issue, it's a complex issue, and it should be dealt with the proper focus and taken seriously by Parliament. Thank you.